Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Ithaq's Bane, bringing you gaming goodness. And in this video, we're going to be starting a series, a new game series, featuring a new game from Alex T and Blackoath Entertainment. And this is kind of an exclusive game. You can only get it if you are a member of his Patreon. I think he was having a few copies extra for sale, so for non-members, but other than that, the only way to get this game is through becoming a Patreon. And I highly recommend it. And the game in question is called Machine Gods of the NOXIAN Expanse. Now, this is a rules-light, OSR-adjacent, dark fantasy sci-fi RPG. Oh yeah. It's a post-apocalyptic world, but where it has a very feudal nature, a very feudal society, but it is done in such a way that it used to be high technology, but those ways were lost due to some catastrophe, and now people view technology as magic. Now, if this sounds a little bit familiar, and if you're a fan of Warhammer 40k, then yes, this could very easily be played as a world in the 40k universe that was lost during the Old Night and hasn't been discovered by the Imperium yet. Could definitely play it that way. And when I was reading through these rules, I was definitely having the Adeptus Mechanicus in mind, you know, the Omnicia. So yes, in this video, we're going to have a very quick look through the rules. It is a rules-light OSR. We're also going to create my character, and it will be my first character because I haven't actually played this yet. So this is going to be a first play. So excuse any mistakes. Put down in the comments anything that I may have missed, but I have read through the rules a number of times. This game got me excited. I mean, it's even delaying Ker Nathalas even longer. That's how good it is. Now, there is an expansion which I don't have called the Void Spire Territories. So we're only going to be playing and using the core rules, the core book. Let's take a look. So here we have Machine Gods of the NOXIAN Expanse. Like I said a little bit earlier, I do only have the basic rulebook. I don't have the expansion yet. I have printed out character sheets in anticipation of making my first character. Now, I'm only going to be going over the key areas. If you want a more detailed overview of the game, I can recommend, I think on the Blackoath Entertainment YouTube channel, there is a video by RPG Frequencies, which kind of goes over in a lot more detail. Also, you can check out the channel, the YouTube channel, Soloist1855. He also goes through the rules in a little bit more detail. But we're just going to quickly go over the key points, make some comments, have a bit of discussion, and then create my character. Now, this was kindly provided to me by Alex T. I'm not actually a Patreon member. I don't have any Patreon memberships of any companies or any designers or anybody, because I've had a lot of problems with Patreon before in sort of payments not going through, payments being repeated, and a lot of problems. So I've basically surrendered and stood back and gone, okay, Patreon, you win. I can't. It's not in the cards for me to use Patreon, unfortunately. But like I say, Alex was very generous and sent me this by surprise. Actually, I wasn't actually expecting this. I got an email and here, have a look at this. So we are taking a look at this. So in the file, you'll get the rules. You'll also get files for a grid where you will have your exploration of the area. You'll be rolling up random sort of locations and terrain. You'll also be getting, like I showed you just now, the character sheet, which includes a sheet to keep spells and also to keep track of your current campaign and your scenes. What else? You're also going to need a polyhedral set of dice. I've got 2 sets here, plus a few extra d6s. What else? You're also going to need As well as this sort of grid for your sort of overland travels, you may also need a grid of maybe a smaller scale for when you are drawing and designing the ruins and dungeons and buildings that you actually go inside. And, as usual, a journal will come in handy so you can write down all of your adventures. So what is this? Well, it is a post-apocalyptic feudal role-playing game. What does that mean? Well, you're in a fantasy-esque world. You have plate mail, chain mail, swords, crossbows, and very much a kind of medieval society. But the world used to be high technology. It used to have GPS, satellites. It used to have AI systems controlling a lot of the things, robots, cyborgs, Skynet. But there was a catastrophe, and essentially all of the technology, well, most of the technology sort of stopped working. The AI systems still have some ability to function, and they control the technology that there is. They control their own little kingdoms. There is some kind of wireless or some kind of internet system which allows for everybody to use electronic wallets or sort of credit cards to make purchases and things. But it's definitely a world where people look at technology as magic. So when we talk about spells, for example, if I go to the right page, so the game has a whole bunch of spells that you can utilize, but you need to think, if you sort of stand back and look at the situation and look at the game, these are essentially items of technology that are giving you this kind of result or this kind of effect. They're not technically spells, but your character will be looking at these things as being spells. Right, background, I've given you a little bit of information on that. Like I say, if you want a bit more detail regarding the background, we'll explore more and find out more as we're playing, but you can also go to those YouTube channels that have covered it in a lot more detail. You, as a character, you are going to be playing as a reclaimer, a specialized class of adventurer who delves into ancient ruins and interacts with forgotten technology. Your character can basically interact, function, and repair, to an extent, items of technology better than most people in this world or on this world. And because of that, your services are very high in demand. Not just by the machine gods, the sort of AI systems, but also by the nobles that rule in the AI's place, or just general noble families or merchant families that are trying to get advantages over other families. So your skills are very much in demand. However, because of your abilities, people tend to look at you with a sort of sideways glance, like you are possessed. There's something wrong with you. You ain't quite right. Character creation. What you'll find in this game is that it is very much a Blackoath entertainment game. There are a lot of similarities with this and his other products. However, that OSR adjacent or OSR style game is done in a lighter fashion here. You'll find a lot of things that are similar but are maybe one step or two steps easier to do or easier to accomplish, or maybe the level of detail is not quite so high. So this is actually a very good game for somebody who wants to start playing Blackoath games, or maybe also wants to start OSR style games. Also with the background, if you've got any kind of background in Warhammer 40k, this can definitely ring some bells for you, and also generate maybe the possibility of playing on a world lost during the Old Night, with the Mechanicus kind of ruling everything, and technology looking as being blessed. The Omnicia. So yeah, the character creation, again, we'll be doing this a bit later as we create our character, but you're going to basically have 6 attributes. You're going to have a rating of between 3 to 18. It says here to roll 3d6 6 times. Gotta be honest, I normally roll 4d6 6 times and then take away the lowest die. That way, if my character is solo on his own or her own, they'll have a bit more chance. So I might be rolling 4d6 instead of 3d6, but your attributes are going to be between 3 to 18. Now, in this game, the attributes are not used so much themselves. The modifiers that they provide are used a lot more within the game system. Once you're done with the attributes, there's a number of other things that you'll need to calculate or you'll need to add to your character. Carrying capacity is equal to your strength, the attribute, yeah, not the modifier. Defense rating is equal to your dex modifier. Drawback, well, you don't start with a drawback, but you start with a feat, like a special ability. If you want another feat, you're going to have to roll for a random drawback. Now you can actually get up to 2 more extra feats if you want to, yeah? But no more than 2. What does it say? It says somewhere, doesn't it? Back here. Maximum of 3 feats total when you start your character. Health is equal to your constitution times 2. So your constitution stat, your attribute times 2, not the modifiers. Initiative is equal to your dex modifier, and then you've got proficiencies. Now, in this game, you will start with 1 weapon and 1 armor proficiency, which will allow you to use that weapon and armor with no hindrances whatsoever. If you attempt to use armor or a weapon that you do not have a proficiency with, you're going to be rolling at a disadvantage. This is one of the mechanics that is very common in OSR and Blackoath games. Advantage and disadvantage. Basically, if you have an advantage, you'll be rolling 2 dice, taking the highest. If you're rolling with a disadvantage, you'll be rolling 2 dice and taking the lowest. The stats are standard: strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, willpower, and presence. Very similar to what we've seen before, so I'm not going to spend any time going over those. Very familiar. There's also a section where you can roll up a little bit of background, a random background for your character. We'll probably do something, or some of these, maybe not all of these. Starting gear, you start with a weapon and armor of your choice, 10 rations, and a kiffle containing 500 coins. Now, a kiffle is something like an e-wallet or a credit card. Everybody uses these to make transactions in this game, on this world. So there is some level of technology still functioning to allow you to use these cards or these sort of e-wallet things to actually make purchases. Now, your starting money, it's not a lot, but it's sufficient for you to get a good sort of starting set of equipment. Then, okay, leveling up, don't need to cover that in this video. All right, checks. This game, again, very similar to other OSR and other Blackoath games. You're making sort of target number checks against a certain difficulty in order to achieve actions, to fight against opponents in combat, to use skills, to interact with NPCs, all of these things that you will be attempting to do. You will be having a set difficulty provided, or you have to come up with a suitable difficulty, and then there'll be a suggested target number. So what you'll be doing is you'll be rolling a d20, you'll be adding your modifier, and that's the number that you want to achieve. However, in Machine Gods, there's something that I must admit I haven't seen before, and that's an alternative way of doing these checks. And that is this thing called the dynamic target number. Provides, again, it's a different table here, but what it does is that this dynamic target number, it allows for a lot more variety, variability, a lot more ways to adjust and modify what you're trying to do and the target number that you're trying to reach. I actually find it to be a more usable system. And not sort of too simple like the standard checks. This can sometimes be thought of as being too simple a method to try and achieve something. This allows you with a little bit more flexibility and, like I say, a little bit more ways to modify within a structured method. So for the dynamic target number, again, you're going to have a difficulty, either given to you or you have to assign a difficulty for the task or the combat or the action that you're trying to do. What you'll then do is you'll add up all of your modifiers to this check. So for example, they've got one here. Ravok is about to attempt jumping across a ravine. His dex modifier is +1 and the GM considers this to be a hard check. Hard. Which according to the dynamic target numbers table results in a target number of 14. So we've got a total modifier of +1 for this check, thanks to his dex. Hard difficulty. Target number is 14. So what you will then do is the same thing. You'll roll the d20, you will add the modifier, and now this is the target number. Now what you'll find is that the target numbers can vary when compared with these sort of standard checks. So what I've found is that in general, these tend to be slightly easier, but it does give yourself as a solo player or your games master the ability to modify the check itself in terms of the target, in terms of effects. So for example, if you've got things that could potentially affect the roll, this kind of gives a much better way of giving you some kind of result. Opposed checks, assisting on checks. Usage die, yes, the usage die system is back. We came across this in Broken Shores. I think I've come across it in some other games as well, but I like the usage die system. It's an easy, simple, clear way of managing consumables, managing time, even for things like setting a size for dungeons and ruins that you're trying to explore. You could also use the usage die for that, and again it explains that later in here. So you can explore these ruins, and when the usage die runs out, it basically says that the ruins or the dungeon is complete. Yeah, every other exit is blocked, kind of thing. I like the usage die system. So what does it say here? Okay, so first you set a starting die type depending on how much ammo you have, for example, or how big the dungeon could be, or how big the ruins could be, for example. And then every time that you use so let's say for example ammo, okay, ammunition. Every combat that you use the ammo, not every turn, not every round, but every combat. So when combat is over, you then check to see whether your ammo has gone down. This is done by rolling the die. If you get a 1 or a 2, it goes down to the next die. And then if you use ammo in the next combat, again, you'll make a roll at the end of combat. If you roll a 1 or 2, it goes down to the next die. If you ever roll a 1 or 2 on the D4, it runs out. Your ammo runs out, you have to restock, yeah? And in games like this, you are purchasing ammo and rations and things like that based on the usage die, yeah, per die. For things like timers, every time that you do something, for example, every day, every hour, every room, for example, you can also roll to see whether something happens or whether the time runs out. Maybe there's a bomb or some kind of explosive. Yeah, you can also roll these dice to find out when it's going to run out and explode. So the usage die system is very, very useful. I like it. Right, combat. So combat is made up of rounds and turns. A turn is one person. I think person is probably the wrong word to use. One combatant's chance to act. Yeah, words here. A round is a combination of all the turns. So if you've got 3 people in combat, you'll have 3 turns, 1 for each combatant, and altogether that is 1 round. First thing you do is you check surprise, if anybody is surprised, and then you roll initiative. If you are surprised, you cannot act in the first round. Also, I'll come to that in a second actually, because there's something else that a surprise will affect. Initiative is a d20, opposed d20, adding your initiative modifier. Now, for creatures and enemies, they don't actually roll for initiative. They have a set initiative value on their stat blocks, and they're always going to have this value. You are trying to get, normally you're trying to get higher than that because you normally want to try and go first, yeah? But there may be occasions when maybe you want to go last, in which case you want to maybe get less. than your enemy's initiative. But you're rolling a d20 and you're adding your initiative modifier, which it said back here, initiative is equal to your dex modifier, your dexterity modifier. Natural 1 for initiative, you lose your turn. A natural 20 means you get an advantage to the first check made in that turn. So always good to roll 20s. Right, combat range bands. Yeah, this is something where having surprise can actually benefit you. There are 3 bands or range bands in combat. Let's move this over to one side a little bit. Is that still on the screen? Actually, this. Let's move the miniatures down a bit. I've got an old Mordheim Witch Hunter here. I've got 2 Plague Bearers from Heresy Miniatures here. Now, this game, when we talk about combat, it normally refers to 3 range bands. You've got engaged, where melee happens. You've got nearby, short range, and you've got far away, which is long range. Simple. If nobody is surprised, it usually starts off like this, with you in the sort of first band and your enemies in the far away band. However, sometimes you can start here, the enemies can start here, depending on surprise. If a surprise happens, the person who succeeded in the surprise can choose at what range they start at. So for example, if we go into a room and we lose a surprise roll, for example, maybe the Plague Bearers heard us coming, they can actually choose to start in melee. Because you can choose your starting range. So maybe they're waiting right by the door. Maybe I succeed. Maybe I surprise the Plague Bearers, and maybe my missile weapons are only useful at nearby. So maybe I choose to start here, or essentially the same thing, isn't it? But yeah, so these are the 3 range bands where combat's going to take place. Now, in combat, each person or each opponent is going to have 3 actions. The first is a free action where they do small, sort of inconsequential things, speaking, dropping an item, swapping weapons, for example. That counts as a free action. Everyone can do one of those. Second is a move action. Again, every character can move during their turn, and when you move, you change your range band by 1. So, for example, if the Plague Bearers are currently far away, it's their turn, they can move to nearby. Also, you can do a third action, which is a standard action, and the standard action involves most of the things that we're going to be wanting to do. Things like making a standard attack, doing a variety of different maneuvers, and again, these are very similar to what we had in Broken Shore. You can cast a spell, you can try to disengage, you can use an item, and that's it, right? Yeah, that's it. So there's a bunch of things that you can do, and like I say, every combatant can do those 3 actions, yeah? 1 of each per turn. Let's move this out of the way. Yeah, I just made a board for this to make it easy. Make it easy and make it look a bit nicer on the camera during the game. Right, the attack check. Now, one thing that you need to realize is that for this game, all the rolls are from the focus of the PCs. The enemies, the opponents, technically don't roll any dice. You're doing everything from the viewpoint of the character. We've come across this before. I think it was in Alone Against Fear, where when you roll to attack, you roll the die, a d20, modified by either your strength or dex, depending on which weapon you're using. And you're trying to hit a certain target, and that target is the enemy's defense rating. So if we're attacking a memory phantom, for example, the defense rating is hard. So for this, we would go to the, where is it? Dynamic target number. It's hard, wasn't it? Hard. So this is the column we're going to be looking at. We add up all of our modifiers, we find the target number, that's what we need to roll to hit that enemy. You then, if you hit, you then roll for damage, which would then be the weapon damage plus either strength or dex, depending on, again, the weapon you're using. Now, when the enemies attack you, you do not roll attack dice for them. Yeah, the games master does not roll attack dice for the enemies. What happens is that you roll your defense. Okay, so what you'll do is you roll a d20. You will add your defense rating, which you will have calculated up here. Armor plus your dex modifier. So where's the armor? Here's the armor. So if you're wearing a chain shirt, for example, it gives you a +3 to your defense rating, and you can get up to a +4 for dex as well. Yeah. You'll roll a d20 plus your defense rating, and you'll compare to the attacker's attack. And again, their attack is a difficulty given on their stat blocks. So it's a nice system, very well suited to solo or co-op play with or without a GM, and everything is done through you. So it's a very simple system, but it's not. It says it's OSR-Lite. This is not a rules-light system. If you want rules-light, you want to look at things like Infernum. You want to look at games like Vampire Alone in the Darkness or Legacy of Cthulhu by 101 Games and Mind's Vision. Those games are very light, very rules-light. This is OSR-Lighter. It's a light version of OSR, but it's not necessarily a rules-light, what we would consider as a rules-light game. But it is a lot easier, it is a lot simpler. There's less things to think about or worry about or remember, so it flows very well. You've got rules for different kinds of conditions. Magic. Okay, the way that magic works in this game is that you need to have either relics or artifacts, which are pieces of technology that will give you the effect of a spell, for example. Artifacts are a little bit different, but relics require resonance cores. They're kind of like batteries. So you're going to need, if you find relics, you're going to need to have a supply of resonance cores. Now, resonance cores will be using the usage die to keep track of how much charge they've got left. A standard resonance core only has a usage die of D4. You can find superior resonance cores or batteries, which may have a D6 usage die. And every time that you use it to cast a spell or to have a spell-like effect happen, you have to roll on the usage die to see whether the charge has run out, and you've got to recharge it. Plenty of spells to choose from. What else? Okay, then there is a section for solo gamers or playing without a GM. So there's a lot of information here in terms of how to run the game, how to create the terrain, how to create locations, how to create encounters and events, how to deal with NPCs. Everything's in here. I mean, I even printed out this section on a separate little handout for myself, so I can refer to it to the side without having to go through the whole book. But it is a good game or GM-less section. It is a very nice addition to this game, and again, it's something that we kind of expect from Alex T and Blackoath. So creating the scene or the encounter or where something happens. Oracles, surprise events in case you need some help generating events or encounters. Story arcs. You've also got action and theme tables to help generate more information, to help you to create ideas, to create situations, random actions, NPCs, a lot of stuff on NPCs. You can also use third-party tools if you really want to come up with maybe a bit more detail in terms of NPCs. There are some, I mean, I might use some of the Shield Dice Studios tools, maybe for a bit more information. And there is also an AI system for the enemy. The enemies are not brain dead. They're not just going to attack you constantly. You're going to have to roll before they activate to find out what they're going to do. And there are two tables, one where the enemy is at full health and one where the enemy is wounded. There is a section on exploration about how to travel and explore no locations. So this is all covered in chapter 4, exploring the Noxian Expanse. And this wasteland is very interesting. It has a way of generating terrain very similar to what we saw in Sacrifice. And again, you're going to be creating the world as you see it here. There is one thing that I'm not sure if I'm going to do. Where is it? Okay, first part here. At all times, your character can see the most important features in the surrounding squares. To simulate this, roll once on the point of interest table for each blank square adjacent to the one you're currently in. This means that if this is your first game, you must roll 4 times on the point of interest table to find out what there is on the 4 adjacent squares. Now, looking at the example here, I don't know whether they've done this. So, for example, if you are in this square here, the mountains, it's basically telling you to roll for the 4 squares adjacent to it to find out what's the point of interest, whether there's nothing, a settlement, an impassable feature, a distinctive landmark, or an ancient ruin. Now, again, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be doing that, to be honest. I suppose I could. But then would you roll up the terrain at the same time? It says here, when you enter a square, you must determine its weather and its terrain. I mean, weather, yes, fine. You roll up the weather when you go in, it's a time thing. But in terms of terrain, if you're rolling up the point of interest, you might want to roll up the terrain at the same time, right? We shall have to see. Like I said, I haven't played this yet. I've been waiting. I've been desperately waiting to play for the video. So I'm getting excited. Landmarks is a whole set of tables to roll up to find out what these landmarks are. And again, they're keywords, they're prompts. And from there you can embellish and give it flavor and give it substance. Encounters, yes, every time. Bum, bum. As soon as you enter a square for the first time, you must roll on the exploration event table. So as you enter for the first time, what happens? What does it say? Once that's resolved, you can proceed as usual. So you're rolling on here every time you enter a new square. Nothing could happen. There could be a hazard or obstacle, or there could be an encounter. Hazards, encounters. Settlements. The section on generating settlements is not bad. It's not bad, but I might use the shield dice tool, the city streets tool, maybe just to give the settlements a bit more depth. This is fine. This can work, but it's not a huge section on how to generate a settlement. It's very surface level. A way to generate tasks from people in the settlement for you. There are some, I don't know why there's all these pieces here. There are some sample NPC encounters. Again, I'll probably, I don't know, I might use that other book I have to generate NPCs. Like I say, there is a section in the GMless chapter where you can roll up information about NPCs. Plus, there are some examples here, but this is not a huge table. This can run out very quickly. But we'll see what goes. I'll probably start off using what's in the book only, and then maybe add tools as we're playing along. Ruins. Okay, so ruins are essentially the dungeons of this game. But instead of going into what we would normally consider as dungeons, what you're actually doing is going into abandoned and ruined buildings. They could be old railway stations, they could be old office buildings, they could be subways, they could be basements. But essentially, like I said, this is a high technology world that's been completely devastated, and it's now kind of runs as a typical sort of feudal or medieval or fantasy world. So when you're exploring the ruins, again, there's a number of steps you have to follow. You're using usage die to determine the size. So every time that you go to a room, you've got to roll on the usage die to see whether this is the last room. And again, you start with different usage die depending on how big the ruin is potentially in size. You're rolling for randomly whether you go into corridors or rooms. You've got information on conditions, again, to find out the description of rooms. You've got verbs and themes. You could potentially come across security systems, features, encounters, events. This is also something that I might adapt or modify for this. So when you're in a ruin, okay, each time you enter a new area, be it a room or corridor, roll a d10. A roll of 1 to 3 indicates you run into trouble. Roll on the ruin encounters table. Okay, which is over here. Ruin encounters. If there is no encounter and you've entered a room, roll on the ruin event table. So, if you're in a corridor, there's a 1 to 3 chance on a d10 of getting an encounter. Otherwise, nothing happens. But if you're in a room, on a 1 to 3, you have an encounter. On a 4 to 10, you get an event. And the events are quite substantial in terms of effect, in terms of storytelling instead of journaling. The issue that I have is that there is no such thing as an empty room. In terms of a room where nothing happens. And like I say, that seems a bit weird to me. I mean, some of the events aren't harmful. For example, there's one here. If you roll a 10 on a d20 for an event, a data leak causes shared memories between PCs. Now, potentially that's not going to be harmful. But what I'm thinking is that there should have been at least a chance of there being an empty room where nothing happens, there's no danger, where maybe you could rest, recuperate, set camp, for example, yeah? But the way that it's done here is I don't think that's a possibility unless you're lucky with the event or you overcome the encounter. Once you've sort of cleared the room, you can search it. If you want to search, there is a table at the back, near the back here with all the equipment and stuff. We can find out what you find. You can find relics and artifacts. Artifacts are special in that they do not need the what are they called, resonance cores, the batteries. But yeah, a nice little ruins system here, very functional, works very easy, and it's very simple again. Then got a chapter on gears and spoils, so a bit on encumbrance in terms of common gear. Then you've got weapons and ranged weapons and ammo and armor. One thing that is missing is range for weapons. Because back here, when we looked at combat range bands, it says here, ranged spells and weapons have a minimum range of nearby to far away. Okay? Although some weapons, such as throwing daggers, have a range of engaged to nearby. But the thing is, it doesn't actually specify, other than the throwing dagger, do any of these other ones have that engaged to nearby range? Does the javelin? Does the sling? So it's not completely clear. Because it says some weapons, not the throwing dagger has a range. So it's obviously referring to other weapons, but again, I'm just assuming it would be the thrown weapons. I don't know, we'll see. What else is there? Random tables for when you find loot. You've got your artifacts. Yes, the artifacts are kind of special relics. You don't need resonance cores to use them, so they have their own power supply, and they have very specific effects. So a relic will give you the effect of one of those spells that are listed down below, but artifacts are very specific in terms of what they do. Now, I think it's the last section. Here's the last section. The last section deals with the enemies that you're going to face. And there are quite a few. And again, it's reading through these enemies that you're going to face. Again, I'm getting the whole 40k vibe. Also, if you guys ever played Destiny 1, what was it called? Was the Rise of Iron expansion on Destiny 1, the video game? And there was this kind of enemy, like nano plague or nano disease. I think it was called Seaver. And what you've got here in the sort of enemies, it's like a lot of these enemies, a lot of these pack hunting dogs with metallic growths, they're kind of infected by this nanotechnology, this like Seaver from the old Destiny 1. Demented clone, a recently awakened clone that's fallen into madness. Ghost Protocol, security AI manifesting as armored phantoms. Memory phantoms, a deranged fragment of an AI manifesting as a person's lost memories. Again, I'm seeing the Sieva, this like red cloud of nanites that are animating and infecting and sort of controlling or possessing all these kind of creatures. And there's a lot of technology in these creatures, but again, the populace will think of it as being sort of magical effects. A null beast, a mutated animal whose presence somehow disrupts technology. Guardian servitors, revenants, plague angels. And again, it talks about nanites, it talks about technology. You've also got sort of more human enemies like slavers, scavengers, raiders, steel spiders. I think there's a lot. There is a good range of enemies here for you to fight against. Some of them are going to be really tough, especially if you're a new character and you're by yourself. You don't have any other PCs with you. You don't have any hirelings. Some of these combat situations could be extremely hard, like the Chrome Giant, for example. 20 health. Now, that symbol there looks like a little chess piece, like a little pawn, chess pawn. What that means is that this is the number and it's multiplied by the number of PCs or the number of players or the number of characters if you're doing solo. So if you've got, for example, if you're playing 2 characters and you come across a Chrome Giant, this thing's now going to have 40 health. Yeah. Now, you'll also see this symbol on numbers sometimes. So if you're playing a single character, you come across demented clones, you're going to come across 3. But if there's 2 characters, if you're playing 2 characters, you're going to come across 6. So yeah. Now, most enemies will also have standard attacks and special attacks. This is going to link with their potential actions using the AI. So you see here, if an enemy is at full health, you're rolling to see how they attack, whether they're going to attack using their standard or their special attack. If they don't have a special attack, then it's just a standard attack. Same thing down here when they're wounded, but there is also an option where sometimes they can use a support action. Some of the creatures that you're going to face have support actions, not all of them. They could also call for help or summon reinforcements, or they could also potentially flee. But there is a lot of variety here. Now, what I have been one of the things I have been doing as I've been prepping for this game is I've been trying to find models for everything. Whether it's models or miniatures that I actually have, like the Plague Bearers here. I have miniatures for Plague Bearers by Heresy. I've got them painted up a long time ago. Plague Bearers. Where are you? There you go, Plague Bearers. Colonies of aggressive nanites pretending to still be human by inhabiting the flesh of dead people. So yeah. Now I like these ones by Heresy because they look like the demons from the Constantine movie with the top of the heads missing. But yeah, I've been trying to find models or STLs and printing out the models, so I've got at least most of the things. There have been a couple of issues for the Void progenitor. God, I can't say it. What does it say here? Void progenitor. Oh God, I do speak English. Honest. For this thing, I did have a plan. There's an Archvillain Games 3D printed model that I've been trying to print out. It's a perfect match for what it's trying to represent. But the thing is, I've tried printing it 3 times and it's failed every single time. I've added more supports. I've hollowed the thing. It's just not working. But I have a whole variety of miniatures that could potentially be used. From Archvillain, Games Workshop, Heresy, Dork Factory, Dark Age, One Page Rules, Bestiary, Station Falls, Unit 9, Wrath of Kings. So yeah, I've got a whole range of miniatures ready. They're not all painted, obviously, but should be good enough for a decent visualization of the combat. Now, that is a quick, I say quick, it's not that quick. I think I've been talking for way too long. I might have to edit this down, but that is an overview of the game. This has taken a bit more time than I planned, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here. So just a brief overview. Brief, it's not brief, is it? It's still long. But I will do the character creation in the next video. Maybe I'll create 2 characters. But am I going to have enough figures? Because again, some of the creatures that I'm going to face are going to have multiple, depending on how many characters I have. We'll see. But I'm thinking that I'll do the character creation in the next video. So I hope this has been of some interest to you guys. It is a good game, and again, it's available by becoming a Patreon of Blackoath Entertainment. I think he does have some hard copies for sale on his website, on the Blackoath Entertainment website. Whether there's still any available, I'm not sure. But you can become a Patreon, get the files, print it out. I think there's also an expansion, which I don't have yet because, as I say, I'm not a Patreon. Patrons mess me around one too many times. But thanks again to Alex T for sending me this, and let's look forward to the game. So until our next video, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, add some comments, tell your friends. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers.